June 1942. America was losing the war. Pearl Harbor had shattered the Pacific Fleet. Japan controlled every ocean, every island, every horizon. Now, Japan's most powerful armada, 200 ships, 700 aircraft, was heading toward one tiny American base, Midway Atoll. If it fell, the Pacific was Japan's forever. America had one last chance to stop them. Japan thought their plan was unbreakable. Admiral Yamamoto had designed the perfect trap. His fleet would approach Midway in complete silence. American defenders would be caught completely off guard. It would be over before breakfast. But America had a secret weapon, and it wasn't a battleship. It was a room, a basement in Pearl Harbor. Inside that cramped underground room, U.S. Navy codebreakers, young men hunched over desks covered in papers, had been working day and night for weeks, breaking Japan's secret military code, message by message, word by word. And they had cracked it. Commander Joseph Rochefort walked into Admiral Nimitz's office one morning and placed a single sheet of paper on his desk. "Admiral, we know exactly where they're going. We know exactly when they'll arrive." Nimitz looked at the paper. Then he looked up. For the first time in 6 months, America had a chance. But what he had to fight with broke his heart. 3 aircraft carriers, a handful of cruisers, destroyers running low on fuel, and pilots, brave young men, many of whom had never seen real combat. Japan was bringing the most powerful naval force ever assembled in the Pacific. America was bringing hope and a secret. June 4th, 1942, 4:30 in the morning. 15 young American pilots climbed into their Devastator torpedo bombers aboard USS Hornet. Their squadron was called Torpedo Squadron 8. Their leader, Lieutenant Commander John Waldron, had written a letter to his wife the night before. He sealed it quietly and left it on his bunk. He already knew. Their planes were slow. Their torpedoes were old. Their fighter escort never showed up. They would be flying alone, directly into the heart of the Japanese fleet, without protection. Waldron looked at his men before takeoff. Young faces, nervous eyes. "We will go in," he told them quietly. "We will fight. And if only one of us comes back, that one will have done his duty." They flew toward the Japanese fleet through broken clouds and open sky. Japanese Zero fighters spotted them immediately. Fast, agile, deadly, the Zeros tore into the slow American torpedo bombers like wolves among sheep. One by one, they fell. Plane after plane, shot down before a single torpedo could reach its target. In 12 terrible minutes, all 15 planes were gone. Of 30 men, only one survived. Ensign George Gay, floating alone in the ocean, watched the entire battle from the water. Torpedo Squadron 8 was gone. But their sacrifice, their broken, burning, falling planes, had pulled every Japanese fighter down to the ocean's surface. The sky above the Japanese fleet was suddenly completely empty. High above, unseen, American dive bombers from USS Enterprise and USS Yorktown were searching desperately through broken clouds. They were almost out of fuel, almost out of time. Navigation had gone wrong. The fleet wasn't where it was supposed to be. Then, Lieutenant Commander Wade McCluskey made a decision that changed history. He turned south. One final search, fuel dangerously low. And there, far below, he saw a single Japanese destroyer cutting a white wake through the blue ocean, racing to rejoin the main fleet. McCluskey followed it. And suddenly, through breaking clouds, the entire Japanese fleet appeared below them. 4 aircraft carriers, decks crowded with planes being refueled and rearmed, fuel lines running across decks, bombs stacked in the open, completely exposed. And not a single fighter in the sky above them. McCluskey's voice came over the radio, calm and quiet. Attack. 54 dive bombers rolled over and screamed downward. In 4 minutes, just 4 minutes, 3 Japanese aircraft carriers were on fire. Akagi, Kaga, Soryu. Ships that had attacked Pearl Harbor just 6 months before, now burning on the same ocean. Japan's finest pilots, their planes, their fuel, their weapons, all gone. The 4th carrier, Hiryu, launched a desperate counterattack and badly damaged USS Yorktown. But by evening, American dive bombers found Hiryu too. 4 carriers gone. In a single day, Han would never recover. Victory came, but it tasted of salt and grief. USS Yorktown, struck by Japanese bombers and torpedoes, fought to survive. Her crew refused to abandon her. Damage control teams worked through smoke and flooding water, desperate to save their ship. For 2 days, she stayed afloat, defiant, while her crew fought for her life. Then, a Japanese submarine found her. 2 torpedoes, and Yorktown finally slipped beneath the Pacific, taking with her men who had refused to leave. At Midway, 307 Americans never came home. But what they had done would echo through history forever. Japan had lost 4 aircraft carriers, 248 aircraft, over 3,000 of her finest sailors and pilots, men who could never be replaced. The most powerful naval force in the Pacific, broken in a single morning. Back in Washington, Admiral King read the battle report in silence. Then he set it down and said quietly, "This is the turning point." And it was. Japan never attacked again, never advanced again. From that morning over Midway, the long road back had begun. For the men of Torpedo Squadron 8, for Yorktown's crew, for every young American who flew into that sky and never returned. They didn't just fight a battle, they saved the Pacific.